We have learned so much working with grievers since 2009 that over 2,000 grievers have taught us this at Spark of Life, that like it or not, we all develop a relationship with grief. We experience loss, both death losses and non-death losses. And right now you might be struggling to survive. You just want to survive this loss. And when I feel accepted by Debbie, for example, my wife, when we fell in love, we started to trust each other, be open to one another, share our fears, our failures, our sins, our dreams with each other. And if she accepted me as I was, and I accepted her as she was, and we did, then love starts to grow. This acceptance is vital in every relationship. Like it or not, we develop a relationship with grief. We don't want that relationship. In fact, we struggle on this life to avoid anything that carries with it life-altering grief because we lost somebody we love. We might have lost somebody to death. We might have lost somebody in a relationship. They might still be alive. And like it or not, we develop a relationship with grief. Acceptance is the key not only in human-to-human relationships, it's also a key in our relationship with this nasty thing called grief. We don't like grief. We try our best to avoid it, and yet we can't escape it. So when you experience loss, one of two things are going to happen with this relationship with grief. Either the relationship is going to destroy you, and I'm talking about your relationship with grief, or your relationship will help you be the best person you've ever been. It doesn't happen overnight, but either I'll let the loss destroy me or propel me to greater heights in the future. So the question is, what are you going to do with your relationship with grief? In every relationship, there's one word that is one of the keys in every single relationship we have. And that word is acceptance. So in every relationship, you have this word of acceptance, accepting me as I am. And the key to acceptance is reality. I have to accept reality. And I want to share three things with you very briefly in this video. One of two things will happen when you're in deep grief. Either you'll be destroyed by it or you'll grow from it. One of those two things. For a while, you're going to feel as if life can never be happy again. That's just called deep grief. Three things to accept with your loss and the deep grief you're feeling. Number one, accept the reality that life's never going to be the same again. That is a tough pill to swallow. That is something that is so difficult because everything in my heart and my soul and every fiber of my body cries out, I want life to be the way it used to be. That's why loss is such a broad subject, because when my life changes, even if I choose to let it change, I got out of ministry in 2013 being paid by churches to do Spark of Life full time. It was our choice to make that transition. We chose to do it. And yet life was different. And because life was not the way it used to be, I went through a slump after we left church work and went into working full time with Spark of Life. It was very difficult. It was a huge loss. I had to accept the fact that life was never going to be the same again. Any attempt to keep life the same after devastating loss will result in failure. And what happens is, by not accepting the fact that life is never going to be the same, subtly and without even knowing it, we try to keep life the same. And we fail because they're never going to come back. Life will never be the same. And it hurts us deeply. And as we go through the grief process, we've got to somehow get through that grief to the point that we accept the reality, you know what, David, life's not going to be the same. So I'm going to use the life I have now and try to make a life out of that. So number one thing we have to accept, life's never going to be the same again after devastating loss. The number two thing I need to accept is that for a while, I'm going to feel terrible. It's not going to be pleasant. I will feel hopeless and despair. We say it all the time at Spark. It's one of the things that we keep harping about. It is the need to grieve, the need to let myself go to the pit of grief, the need to feel terrible. and to feel hopeless and helpless. We fight against that because who wants to be there? Who wants to go to the pit of grief and wallow in the pit of grief for the rest of our lives? It appears to be that's the way life's going to always be. There are no shortcuts to it. When I say I need to accept the fact that I need to feel terrible, it includes being honest with reality. I got a call the other day from someone who, a couple who lost a son in a car accident. The son had been drinking heavily, was impaired, didn't wear a seatbelt. It was a one-car accident. He died in the accident. Their lives forever changed. The kid was probably 18 years of age. Their life is never going to be the same again. So with this couple, obviously they are in grief. They are mourning deeply. They can't make it through an hour without crying. And somebody has to go back to work. And usually both of them have to go back to work to make a living. You don't want to go back to work, but you have all these emotions inside of you. And when we talk about acceptance is the key, I have to accept the reality that they could have been very angry at their son for what he did. And many times parents will not admit their anger if it's somebody they love that has died, especially a child, or it could be a spouse. And because they were at fault, perhaps, for the accident, oftentimes parents will not deal with reality. And it's understandable. It's not easy to admit that you're angry with your son who died, but they had to deal with reality. We've had many people come to our Spark of Life retreats that this was a big turning point in their recovery when they finally admitted that they were angry at their child or angry at their spouse for not going to the doctor, angry at their child for not wearing a seatbelt, angry at their child for taking their life by suicide. It doesn't mean they didn't love the child. It meant that honesty and acceptance of the fact that they were angry was a very big deal to them. When they finally dealt with the reality of their own anger toward their loved one, it started to free them up to breathe some fresh air out of the pit. That's what acceptance can do for you. Acceptance, number one, to admit that life will never be the same again. Acceptance, number two, I have to go to the pit of grief. And I have to go there with honesty. And I have to go there with realness. And I have to go there and get that stuff out. And if I start talking about it, I'm in the depths of the pit. I have to go through it. I can't short circuit the process. Can't do it. Acceptance number three is to accept the fact that I can still be happy again. That acceptance comes slowly. You might not be there yet. I've said often that our present emotions don't dictate future realities. And I say that because when I was at the pit of grief, and I still visit there sometimes, and the present reality or the present emotions often equates in our minds to this is the way I'm going to feel for the rest of my life. It's rarely true. But if we don't accept the fact that about the possibility of a healthy recovery, that someday I can be happy again, it doesn't mean I dishonor my loved one. And that's accepting the reality that someday I can have a rich, purposeful, meaningful, joyful life again. And that doesn't dishonor my loved one if it's a death loss. It actually honors them. It actually honors them. For a while, I can't see it. So I need to accept three things. I need to accept the fact that my life's never going to be the same again. I need to eventually accept the fact that I'm in deep grief and I might have angry feelings at the one who died, but I've got to be honest with my feelings. And acceptance of fact number three, that I can be happy again someday, regardless of how I feel right now. It helps to hear that. When you're in deep grief and some of you are on the verge of giving up because you feel helpless and hopeless and deeply sad, and how can life ever be lived without the one that died? We are so sorry for what you're going through. But I want to speak words of life into you today. Acceptance is the key to any relationship. And our relationship with grief, as tough as it is, can one day propel me to heights I've never known. No, I'll always miss my loved ones. I'll always have a degree of pain in the losses of people I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I don't like it, but life can be good again. At Spark of Life, we really do believe in hope. We really do believe that you can be happy again, that you can have joy with your pain of your loss. And, that loss will never go away. The pain will never totally go away. But that doesn't mean you can't have a rich, fulfilling, purposeful, meaningful life again. We want to instill hope. At Spark of Life, we believe there's always hope. Go to sparkoflife.org for more help.